Morning, everyone. David Aragona here, taking a look at one of the stakes events at Woodbine on Sunday. It is that King's Plate card, and we're going to take a look at one of the undercard stakes, the Grade 3 Bold Venture, which goes as race 7. Haven't yet seen the morning line for this race, but I imagine it's going to be a pretty wide open tote board as 10 runners are signed on, and this field does look fairly evenly matched on paper. A lot of runners that are stepping up in class, some trying synth for the first time, a really intriguing race to handicap, and you can make a case for just about every runner in this field. Before we get to the main contenders, let's take a look at the TimeformUS pace projector for this Bold Venture to get a sense of how it might be run through the opening quarter mile. And you see that the 3-year-old, the number 5, Patches O'Houlihan, is shown on a clear early lead, and that's not a big surprise. This horse has a lot of early speed. He is one of those that is stepping up in class, now facing older rivals, but he's shown a lot of early zip in some of his sprint races prior to this on both the synthetic and the turf, so you'd imagine he's going to go to the front. The others that are shown in behind him do have tactical speed, horses like County Final, Last American Exit, and Secret Reserve, but none of them are really confirmed front runners like the 5 is, so I would imagine that won't be in front. We'll have to see how fast he must go on the front end. Let's go through this field in post position order and spend some time on each of the 10 runners in this race, beginning with the number 1, Candy Overload, and let's take a look at his most recent start back in early June. This was the Pink Lloyd Stakes, and that's him in the pink silks with the white cap trying to close through between horses down towards the inside. The winner of this race, Rockcrest, just kind of snuck away on the front end, coming around the far turn. Nobody could catch him, but I thought that Candy Overload puts in a pretty good run through the final quarter mile to get within about 2 lengths of that foe by the time they come out of the finish, finishing with much more vigor than anybody else in that race. And as you take a look at his PPs in TimeformUS, you'll see that there's a lot of blue color-coded fractions through his last 3 races. Those pace figures with those rising lines, the blue color coding in each of the last 3 starts, that's going to work against a horse like this, trying to close into slow paces time and again. We'll see if he gets more pace to close into this time, but he is a horse that has been running deceptively well in a few of his recent starts and could be a decent price in this race. Like I said, haven't seen the line yet, but does feel like he could be one that is in the 6 to 8 to 1 range. So on to the number 2, Flag of Honor, and we'll take a look at his race from back in early May in Australia. This is a race from Gosford, and he's a horse that has made all 6 of his prior starts in Australia, competing in 2022 5 times, won the first couple starts of his career. In this race we're taking a look at, he's coming through along the inside, was returning from a layoff since the October of the previous year, and he's pretty game to come through and beat those horses. A little hard to gauge the quality of those races. That was a handicap that he was coming out of. He was getting weight from a few of his rivals, including the runner-up, who he was carrying 8 less pounds than that day. Is getting first-time Lasix here, going into a new barn. Julia Carey appears to be working well over the synthetic track at Woodbine in Canada, but he's just kind of a wild card in this race. Really hard to gauge his quality and know what to expect from him. They have picked out a pretty tough spot for him to make his North American debut. Let's move on to the number 3, County Final. And this is a horse that will actually be trying a synthetic track for the first time. But one thing I like to look for with horses that are trying synth for the first time is that they've shown some surface versatility in their prior races. And he is definitely a horse that has that. He's run well on both dirt and turf in the past. Hard to gauge his form coming in here because he was claimed by Safi Joseph and New Connections for $80,000 back in November of last year. He's had 4 starts for the new barn, 1 on the dirt, 3 on the turf, and he's finished off the board in all of those races, but he's run deceptively well a few times, particularly in that last race when he was chasing on horses like Steady On and Churchtown after getting a really wide trip. That was the best effort that we've seen from him for the Safi Joseph barn, and he runs back to that 115 TimeformUS speed figure. He can be a contender here, just has to answer that surface question trying synthetic for the first time while also coming off a layoff, but one that could be a price in this race that I think is somewhat intriguing. The number 4 is Last American Exit, and this is a horse that's stepping back up into stakes company. He was actually in that Pink Lloyd Stakes that we watched in the first replay we showed behind Candy Overload. He was 3rd in that race. He's actually run twice since then, beaten by one of today's rivals, Super Watson, in each of those races. Just feels like a horse that has to turn the tables on a few of these rivals, has to produce a better performance than we've seen from him so far for the New Connection. So one that seems like he's got his work cut out for him, but will be a big price in this race. The number 5 is Patches O'Houlihan. He's that horse that was shown leading on the pace projector. Let's check out his last race in the Lake Superior. And he just got to the front this day and continued to widen his advantage throughout, beating some overmatched 3-year-old rivals. This horse has been absolutely perfect on the synthetic track at Woodbine. Had one loss last year on the turf when he just really didn't show up, came out of that race with an injury, according to the trainer, but came back this year. He's been 4 for 4 so far in 2023. Most of the victories looking pretty easy, like that last one. He's got a ton of early speed, as you can see. He do his racing towards the front end. Did come from just off the pace in that turf race too back, but that was a 5-furlong affair. So given that speed that he possesses, he's going to be in front here, and we'll see if he can take them all the way on the lead. Just a horse that's really stepping up in class here. You see those TimeformUS race ratings next to the conditions of each race. Most of them in the high 90s or low 100s. A lot of the horses in this field are coming out of races with race ratings that are considerably higher than that. So just a big class test for the number 5, Patches O'Houlihan. The number 6 is Secret Reserve, and he's another runner that was beaten by a few of these, Candy Overload and Super Watson, coming out of some similar races to Last American Exit, who we just talked about, and kind of along the same lines as that foe. Just feels like one that's going to have to really improve to be effective here. He has tried some graded stakes in the past, actually won the Bold Venture back in 2022 when he was in better form, caused an upset that day at 10-1. Just hasn't really run back to that level since then, and especially since coming back in 2023. His form just a little lackluster compared to some others in here, but like Last American Exit, probably going to be a price in this race. Let's take a look at the last race of the number 7, Border Town. This was his second start on synthetic, first start in quite a while up at Woodbine. He was making his first start off a claim for Martin Drexler this day, and you could see he's kind of held up in traffic in upper stretch here. He's that horse in that light blue cap, and his jockey is just looking for somewhere to go. Ultimately has to angle down towards the inside, but he had to wait too long and behind those foes and can't catch that gate to wire winner Dream Shake, who is a runner who has quite a bit of quality, so won't fault Border Town for being unable to reel in that rival, and he actually might have had a chance to win that race if he'd been able to get into the clear a little bit sooner. He's a horse who had been going off form on the turf, or his prior connections had gone through the claim box a few times, but picked up by Martin Drexler out of that race at Gulfstream Park in May. And Martin Drexler has been having quite a season so far at Woodbine, winning at a high rate with a lot of runners that he's claimed, improving them. And Bordertown just seems to fit that bill because he really got back on track last time, and they're getting ambitious now, stepping up into this graded stakes race. And it's interesting to note that he chooses to ride Rafael Hernandez among his 3 runners in this race. This is the one that Rafael Hernandez is riding because these two, Martin Drexler and Hernandez, have had a lot of success over the past 18 months. You can see this DRF formulator fact, 24 for 66, a 36% win rate with a very healthy $3.56 ROI. So worth paying attention to that rider assignment on Bordertown. The number 8 is Told It All, and another horse that's probably going to be a big price in this race. He's coming off a loss to Super Watson and Secret Reserve last time. That was his first start off a layoff, coming back in July since having last race in November. But just going back through his form, he's not a horse that has found the winner's circle very much recently. He's primarily been competing against weaker company, not running the kind of speed figures that are necessary to compete against some of the top contenders in this race. So just feels like another big price in this race that is one of the tougher ones to make a case for in a race that does seem pretty wide open. The number 9 is Old Chestnut, and let's take a look at his past performances in TimeformUS. He is another one of the Martin Drexler trainees in this race, and another horse that was claimed by this barn back in October of last year, picked up for $32,000, was laid up after that, but he's come back for 4 starts in 2023, and even though he's just won one of those, he's run well in all 4 of those races, was 3rd in the Grade 3 Jacques Cartier over similar conditions to today, 6 furlongs on the synthetic track at Woodbine, and he finished behind Anarchist and Ice Chocolat, 2 very nice runners who have since done some good things against graded stakes company. He's been off the board in 2 turf stakes since then, but has run well in each of those races. Actually was steadied at the wire last time behind Dream Shake. So he's held his form well, is earning competitive TimeformUS speed figures. Yet another runner that you can make a case for in this wide open bold venture. And then we'll close out the field with the number 10 Super Watson. Let's take a look at a replay of his last race, and he is yet another of the Martin Drexler trainees in this field. Actually, the 3rd of the 3 of them drawn to the widest post position. And also in this race, our Last American Exit and Secret Reserve that you see highlighted there. But Big Gray is Super Watson, who's rolling down the outside. Kazushi Kimura really got him started early on the far turn. He was able to mow this field down coming through the stretch to win his third race in the last 4 starts. He will be stepping up out of a series of optional claiming races into this graded stakes race, but appears that the barn is going to strike while the iron is hot, and you can't blame them because this horse really has been in a great form recently. Let's take a look at my top picks for this bold venture. And I could have gone many different ways in this race. A lot of options to choose from that offered some appeal. I'm going to put the number 7 Border Town on top. I was just really impressed by the way he overcame some trouble last time in that optional claimer behind a good horse like Dream Shake. And I showed that stat for Martin Drexler and Rafael Hernandez. Just seems like a barn that's really tough to go against at Woodbine right now. So he's my top pick. I am interested in the number 1 Candy Overload, just being against some of those slow paces in recent starts. I think his form overall is a little dirtied up, but he does need some pace to close into in this race. So the number 7 Border Town for me, and a very intriguing edition of the Grade 3 Bold Venture on Sunday at Woodbine. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.